was just um, about to tell Peter about the last conversation we had where you teased a very interesting topic, and that was around the area of decision making and how a lot of what teams struggle with is this inability to make decisions, not just from an empowerment perspective, but rather than going after tasks, that we go after key decisions and ensuring that those are happening frequently and that they're happening effectively. You wanna try to tell us a little more about that? Because I thought that was a very interesting way of looking at it.
First, we have to look at the baseline. When task management and those principles around managing work came out in 1911, our whole society was either agrarian or getting to that post-industrial side where they're making widgets. And then the managers thought that the best thing they could do would be to figure out how to arrange a system, how to arrange all the tasks, and then just make people do the tasks. And that works out when your output is a thing. But in today's society, 60% of the entire US workforce are knowledge workers. And knowledge workers, by definition, don't produce a widget. There are doctors, or lawyers, or architects, trainers, right? You don't produce a widget. You make decisions over what needs to get done. And so if we want to make our workforce, who are decision makers, more productive, then managers need to concentrate on the decision-making process, not on the tasks. Most times we hire knowledge workers because they know better how to make decisions and do the tasks than we do. Most knowledge workers know more than their bosses. So actually monitoring their tasks is going to be helpful because they know what tasks to do better than you do anyway. The only thing you can do to help to make sure that they actually optimally produce is to make sure they're making the right decisions.
And I think that's very timely, right? That's actually a very interesting subject because it's very timely. A lot of the shift that we're seeing with some of the challenges with adapting to distributed and hybrid teams is the managers, right? How do you effectively provide value as a manager from a remote location, especially when some managers have grown accustomed to managing by walking the floor. It's easy to manage tasks when you're walking and tapping people on the shoulder, but when you're remote, you can't do that. It's very difficult to do that. In fact, it's actually kind of productive to do that. So shifting the paradigm to manage decision-making rather than task is actually a very timely way of changing and doing it effectively.
I think, as we use the term manage, when we're talking about manage the work, right, I think there's a lot of built-in assumptions that any individual is going to add to their interpretation, right, of what we're talking about. So I think about, some of the leadership examples, right, that have been set for us, right, people that have shown that they figured out how to overcome this inward desire to manage the work and instead manage the work environment, right? Was it David Marquette, I think, the naval officer, right, who talked about, about, move the decision-making to the area that has the information. But your focus has to be to help those people understand how to make a good decision, right? How to make a decision like the organization would expect. And I think that's difficult. General McChrystal, right? Team of Teams, right? A quote from him, I'm going to paraphrase something like, I used to think I needed to be like the master of chess, right? The chess master, the person who understands the entire board, who knows where every piece is and where it's going to move next. And he said, What I've learned, instead of needing to be the chess master, I need to be the master gardener. I need to create a fertile environment where my people can grow and take over, right, themselves. I don't know, do we have good examples over the past 10 or 20 years of the more, forgive me, Brian, traditional approach of managing the tasks and the work? Have we seen any great thought leadership come from that in the past couple of decades?
I have to say, I really have not. It's been the same thing since the 50s. Like nothing much has changed.
Well, during the industrial revolution and during the assembly line, that was a very effective way of managing, right? Because we were managing these widget creations, and we just had to watch the motion. We had to make sure that each task was happening. But as more and more creativity had to be added to complete the work, a complex work, a knowledge worker had to step in and make those decisions according to their inspection and adoption, right? The thing that we created became less and less predictable. There was less repetition. So I have to agree. I don't think that when it comes to knowledge worker in the complex environments that most of us deal with today, that there is an effective way for you to manage tasks. Now, some fields might lend themselves into that, right? If you're producing the same widget over and over, and you're doing it in an assembly line, and you're going after volume, and there's no complexity, sure, right? But if you're likely in the scenario that Brian presented, and that is complex knowledge working, just doesn't, it falls flat on its face, right?
Piece about understanding the whole chessboard, the more complex things are, the more you can't understand the whole chessboard and all the decisions that you made within it. There's too many variables involved. Like that's almost by definition of being complex, right? And I think that we're in this age, as things get more complex, there's for any decision that needs to get made, there are some criteria that are more important for making that decision than others. And only the experts will be able to identify what those criterion are. And again, one person doesn't have the mental capacity to hold it all. It's just impossible.
Yeah. And even if they had the mental capacity, the amount of time that it would take to be involved in every decision is prohibitive. Right? Yeah. So I'm intrigued by this idea of, and I'll call it investing, right? Of leadership or management, investing the time to help their people understand what a good decision looks like in that particular environment. Right? It's not a free-for-all where, oh, I'm an independent knowledge worker, I can do what I want because I have the best interests at heart for the company. Well, what if the decisions you're making aren't leading the organization towards the annual goal they've established, let's say, right? Or some standards that they're trying to uphold, or whatever it might be, right? So we can trust people to do the best they can, but if they don't have that guidance of what does a good decision look like in this environment, but though that takes time. Well, this comes back to what should managers be doing, right? They should be not managing the task, but managing the work environment and helping people understand these things.
Yeah, that reminds me that there was a fundamental concept once that I've heard, and I said, wow, yeah, I can't believe that's not more popular. It's this idea that there's a difference between assigning, aiding, and mentoring, right? That I could throw something over the fence and ask you to do it, and I'm just assigning you and almost setting you up for failure if I haven't mentored and taught what I know would be a proper way of doing that, and then continuing to coach and continuing to mentor you into your own way of doing it better than I did, right? A lot of leaders and managers are using individuals as a pair of hands, and everything has to go through them. And it's funny you mentioned turn the ship around. David Marquette, because he's sort of exemplify that, right? And that's that book that he wrote, where he tells a story of a nuclear submarine, and he gave decision-making power to the individuals in the submarine. And it turned out that because he was able to do that, or at some point they all became thinkers and doers on that submarine. So the submarine every year got the top awards and inspections over any other submarine. And he said that is because he had all of the people in his ship were thinkers and doers, as opposed to one person who was a thinker and a doer, and the rest were just hands, right?
Yeah, no, sir. I would add just one more thing to that. Thinkers and doing that have learned how to think like him, because he's still the one with the most experience. Right? He's still the one that would make the best decision, but Brian, he physically can't. So, the communication steps that you have to go through, right, to test the waters about, hey, does this person really understand, about the objective here and the decisions that they're making?
Yeah, an interesting part about that too is the effect that it has on the individual that is providing that contribution. So there's a video that kind of tells that story on YouTube, and I went on it the other day. Very, very interesting video. It's essentially by Dave Marquette, and he had the video, and then there were posts, and those posts were actually from the individuals that were on the ship.
No
years later, giving him credit for making them the leaders that they are today. The fact that they took that now, like you said, they were able to think like him, and now they're able to make other people in that same capacity do similar things and be the leaders that create more leaders. So think about an organization that is able to do that, where you are investing the time, as you put it so well, Peter, in creating that leadership mindset that continues to create other leaders. How much more competitive would that organization be?
Well, there you go. So why, there's a whole list of reasons why managers don't do that, but one of them is they don't have the time, because they're so busy managing the work, right? That they don't have the time to make that alternate investment in building good leaders.
So now I'm gonna be a contrarian and insert a wrench in there. See what comes out of that. What about the concept of garbage in, garbage out? What about those leaders that said, I can't give decision-making power to my team? Have you seen them? They're not capable of doing that. What do we say to that?
Why do we have them? If again, I'm hiring knowledge workers. They're 60% of society. They're supposed to be able to make decisions and know more than you. If you can't trust them to make the decisions, why are you paying them instead of going out and finding someone who can make the decision and paying them and getting the results?
Excellent answer, Brian. And look, and if that person is still really good at doing something, but maybe not taking on that decision-making responsibility, even in these knowledge work environments, sometimes there's still little places where someone can just sit in a corner and take care of some tasks, because that has to be done too. So it doesn't mean they have to go necessarily. They might, right? But they have to go from that decision-making position into something else, whether it's within the organization or somewhere. Brian, I love the answer. Yeah. Hey, look, take responsibility for it. I hired that person.
Yeah, if we were going to summarize this for a manager looking to be effective, whether it be in a remote environment or a hybrid environment or at the office, how do they put this to work?
A summary of everything that we just said.
Yeah, isn't that an easy thing to do? I'll take a stab at it. I cheated a little. I have a notepad here, so I took some notes. I would say, first and foremost, make sure you hire the right people. Yeah. Second, that you set value-driven objectives, that the thing that that you're actually holding individuals performance accountable for is based on value, not tasks. And that you decentralize the ability for those individuals to make decisions. In other words, you empower them. And number 4 and last in my short list is that you make sure to delegate, coach, and mentor, that you make the time to do that, and you make that one of your primary tools for continuing to foster that cycle that continues to improve.
Yeah, I think that's a good list. And
Yeah.
I think that, if I had to add one more kind of tie-up summary for all of it, I would say if you're hiring experts, knowledge workers for their expertise, then you have to create an environment where they're allowed and expected to demonstrate their expertise, which means they should be making decisions in that area. And again, it's hard to create that environment, and it's scary. But if you don't do it, there's no point in hiring those experts.
Is the point of trusting your people, man.
Yeah, if I don't trust them, they're in the wrong position.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. That is 1 minute over our time box. Brian, I gotta say that is the coolest video chat I've ever had. Just having you walk around with the beach in the background. Pretty cool.
Okay, and gentlemen, I got to run. Sorry, I got a 3:30. So it's good to see you.
You too, Peter.
Oh,
Great
good
chat as
catching
always.
up.
Be well.
Bye.
Bye-bye.